Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Mandiazzo back in the Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and let's start, shall we? This time we're covering set 12 for Keter Sanctuary Bastion. And what I mean by Bastion, I'm not talking about Bastion Accord. If you want to go watch the Bastion Accord deck profile, go check the other video that was released today because I'm doing both of these at once. Thankfully, I'm not recording both of these at once because I'd be going insane, but I'm recording them right after the other. So if I seem insane in the other one, yeah, it's probably because I'm recording that one after this one. But anyways, I'm going to get started, shall we? Because Bastion got a new form in the form of Bastion Accord with a very shitty name to go along with it. Not the Bastion Accord part, the other part of the name, the title. But, you know, the deck works out well. Like, the deck gets a lot more power out of going with grade 3s. It's no longer a going first type of deck, believe it. Like, it kind of like was with Bruce, where they swapped. Where, like, Bruce wanted to go first before, now they actually want to go second. This deck can go first, but it benefits more from going second. So let's go and get started, shall we, and see what we got. First of today, we have Knight of Heavenly Bow's base, Grandeur boost, 5k show, 6k base, auto remove pop for 1 second draw card, standard starter, not supposed to have just a free draw if you win second. You can really run any starter in this deck because none of the ride line really requires base, but hey, it's nice to have for the theme of Cloud Knights, and also, base is just all around my favorite starter from Keter. Like, look at him, he's just like, he's energized, he's ready to be a knight, and he just has his like bow and arrow, which I am biased for, so there is that. And then we have our triggers. First up, we have our Over Trigger in Light Dragon Deity of Honors Armor Tinoa, Grid Zero Boost, 50k Shield, 5k Power. Over Trigger, you have one Over Trigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of you. It gets plus 1 million for the end of the turn. And if revealed during Drive Check, activate its additional effect, which you get until end of turn. You also perform Drive Checks for the battle of your rear guard attacks. All around, pretty solid. You get rear guard Drive Checks in a deck full of grade 3s. That's pretty much Sextuple Drive in a nutshell, which is nice to have. Or, and this is technically possible, what is 9? What is 9 in the phrase of it? Whatever, 9 drive checks. It is technically possible to get 9 drive checks. Is it worth it? No, but is it funny? Yes. But, you know, either way, though, being guaranteed 1 million draws is nice to have, but also getting drive checks for your rear guards is nice as well, because basically, if you get to grade 3 and you pull it while you're on grade 3 rush turn, you're getting a lot of hand cards out of it. So, it's nice to have. You can call Valnut, because Valnut really works more for the aggressive of this deck, but I do prefer Armor Tinoa, because when I do see it, it's pretty often when it's on the grade 3 turn. That's a lot of numbers to hand cards. On the downside, though, for some reason I'm not running Duravaso because I felt like going back to the OG over, and I remember how much Armor Tinoa hated me. But, hey, so far, it hasn't hated me too much yet, so I'll take that as a win in my book. And then we have our normal triggers. First, we run one copy of Knight of Heavenly Hammer Gurgant. This can really be any critical trigger that's a vanilla. I just chose to run Gurgant as a vanilla because, it's a deck theme. Anyways, Grid Zero Boost, 15k Shield, 5k Power. Standard critical, nuts about it. Like I said, you can really run any critical here as a one of, but this deck has a total of 5 criticals for pressure, so I might as well go with this one as the one of. Then we have 2 Knight of Heavenly Pierce Gallus, Grid Zero Boost, 5k Shield, 5k Power. It's nice to have 2 draws because, you know, the deck is pretty much how it's always been, where at least this version of it, where it's just all grade 3s, and then even though if you have a big hand, it really is just all grade 3s, so it's like the illusion of guarding power. Having the draws helps not have the illusion of guarding power. Also, it helps get hand cards in case your opponent nukes your board and you need to spam down grade 3s 24/7. So 2 of Gallus, again, can be any draw trigger you want, but I just go for the theme. Then we have 4 crits in Blade Feather Dragon, so a total of 5 crits, like I said. Grade 0 Boost, 15k Shield, 4k Power. Critical trigger, auto react, and about to boost it, put this unit to soul, choose your music, 2k for the turn. Cool. Solid ability. Half the time I use Fort Skill, I call this. I know a lot of people would be upset about that. Me personally, I'm not. Like, I know a lot of people talk shit about Fort and Cheris, like, from, or like the well, no one talks about the Magnolia line being shit, but that's because no one uses it except for me. But, you know, it's the same thing as the Keter line for Fort, pretty much. But my thing is, I don't really care because it doesn't, like, it's half the time that it does it. But honestly, because it gives me Blade Feather Dragon, who has a rear guard skill, doesn't bother me too much. Either way, though, being able to go to Soul and give something 2k, well, yeah, most of the time I'm only going to send it to Soul and then give the Vanguard 2k, because the Vanguard's the only thing on board. It's free Soul. And towards end of late game, sometimes you might want the extra Soul. I remember there was one game where if I didn't flip over that Blade Feather, I actually would have lost, because that Blade Feather gave me just enough Soul to use Alden twice, and then also my Sparar, and not basically minus anything from it. So 4 Blade Feather. I owe this deck, and I owe Blade Feather that much. Then we have 4 Protection Magic Pro B, Grade 0 Boost, 5k Shield, 4k Base. The other card I throw down from Fort Skill, you know, it's always consistently one of the 4. It's either Blade Feather, this thing, Hanataria now, or a PG. It's one of the 4, and the weird thing is it's all like a 25% odd of each one happening, believe it or not, which is just interesting to me. Either way, Pro B, you know, continues guard trigger, opponent's Vanguard to grade 3, plus 5k Shield. It's a draw trigger, nice to have, helps increase our hand, helps increase guarding power a little bit more, and when we get to late games, or really early games, because you know you're going to have to take really big attacks later on, it's nice to have the extra draw trigger 5 5k shield. So 4 Proby, nice to have. This deck does still see the crits very often, typically when I want them to, so take that as you will. The most of them just stay in deck. Then we finally have 4 heals and Healer of Heavenly Staff Arches. Grandeur boost 15k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, Nosferatu is just a vanilla heal. I don't really like the effect tools too much. They are fluctuating 10 to 25k shields, and while they do have more overall shield, I would have a consistent 15k shield over the fluctuating guard power, but if you want to run those, go ahead, but I prefer the standard 15k heal. Also, Arches has had my back a lot. Like, she's not like Ariana from Bruce, where pretty much every time I want Ariana to show up, she will show up, but she's like Rona and Riona, I think her name is, from Dragon Empire Nirvana, where pretty much there are the times where she won't show up, but then like when I really want to win, she will show up. So I can rely on Arches to be there when I actually need her. So take that as you will. 4 of. And then we have our first grade 1 and our only grade 1 that isn't the ride deck one, and that is Aegis Meyer Dragon at 4 copies, grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base, continue your sentinel, you have to force stones in deck and also put on guard circle, choose one of your units, it cannot be hit till the battle, and if your hand is 2 or more cards, choose a card from your hand to guard it. Standard PG, nothing special about it basically means if this and only one other cards in your hand placed on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great, because that means you can be aggressive as you want in the early game, or what classifies in the early game in this case is first grade 3 turn, and then when your opponent counterattacks you, you throw down this PG. Typically, you will most likely have fodder for every single one of these PGs that you will have to discard because how the deck works, except for the last one. That situation has come up a lot of times for me where it's pretty much only the last one that I get to play for free. But hey, being able to play one for free is nice to have, especially when you board rush your opponent with a bunch of grade 3s. So I'll take what I can get for Aegis Meyer Dragon. You can run Paladinium Zero Dragon too because they both have the exact same skill, but I'd rather have Aegis Meyer Dragon because it was released around the time that Bastion was released. And then we have our last grade 1, obviously. One of them in the ride deck and on the main deck of Knight of Heavenly Sword 4. Before I continue, I must again say, this build is not the build meant to focus on Accord. Accord was pretty much shoved in here with the new support cards, and that's pretty much it. So if you want the Accord focused deck, again, go find the Accord focused deck. This one's the one with all the Bastion stuff in it, basically, or like all grade 3s. Anyways, continuing off the deck profile. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base for 4. Auto rolled upon by Knight of Heavenly Spear, Rooks, reveal 2 grade 3s from your hand. That's almost guaranteed unless you have all triggers and or PGs in hand. Reveal the top card of your deck, call it to rear guard circle unit card, and put it to drop zone if it isn't. This deck is all unit cards. Guaranteed, no matter what, 100%, when you use that skill, you are calling the top card of your deck. It doesn't matter if you want to, you are calling it. And I know people complain about it. Personally, like I said, I don't care. I lived through it all. I've seen it flip over heals. I've seen it flip over fronts. I've seen it flip over draws, crits, things, etc. I've also seen it flip over an Alden and the stupid bullshit that can do. But point is, it's not as bad. When you learn to deal with it, suddenly the deck becomes a lot better. Trust me, because it's all about the mindset. Either way, though, being able to call a unit to rear guard is nice because, again, if it flips over a grade 3, A, multi-attack. If your opponent was dumb enough to put you to 2 damage and you flip over an Alden, A, more multi-attack. Or just, I guess, 3 attacks, with what 2 of them probably being grade 3s, which is nice to have. And then the other ability, which is never going to go off in this deck, but if you find a way to do it, good for you. Active rear guard circle once per turn. Counterboss 1, choose one of your grade 3 vanguards, plus 5k for the turn. Cool. 5k to a vanguard that doesn't need it. Again, it's physically impossible to pull off in this deck because there's no way to call it from soul and or put it to drop zone and get it back from drop zone. But hey, if you find a way to get to rear guard, cool. Free 5k to vanguard, though, is not really worth it. One of in the ride deck of 4, none in the main deck because you want to focus on all grade 3s. Then we have our only grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, because again, focus on all grade 3s, Knight of Heavenly Spear, Rooks. Grade 2 units have 5k shield, 10k base, auto rolled upon by Apex Ruler Bastion, reveal 3 grade 3s from your hand and draw a card. I remember the very last time I used that skill, then it bricked, was all the way back in set 3. I have not bricked with, personally, I have not bricked with that skill since set 3. And yet my friend's second most recent attempt with Rooks, he bricked, because he didn't have enough grade 3s. Thankfully, in this build, it's easy to hit 3 grade 3s in hand, so there is that. So either way, though, free draw is nice to have, and then continues rear guard during your turn. If you have 3 more grade 3 units, this unit gets boosted and plus 5k power. Okay, not worth it, because while, yeah, it's a free booster if you have 3 more 3 grade 3s, which is nice to have, it's not a grade 3 itself, which therefore means there's a higher chance to brick on either its own skill or fort skill, but also doesn't get support from the rest of the deck pretty much, so it's not really worth having. So one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. If you find a way to call it to rear guard, good for you, but it's really not really worth it for its skill. Then move on to our grade 3s, where pretty much most of the deck is. First up, we own 2 copies of my favorite grade 3 of all time, and I will die on this mountain until I have to get rid of them. Grade 3 to 13k base of Heavenly Era of Sure Hit Sparar. If you know me at all, if you're paying attention to the intro of this video, you probably understand why I like him specifically. Anyways, from a rear guard circle. When this unit stands by your Vanguard's ability, Soul Blast to draw a card. Always my favorite first restand target whenever I'm not going to prime or whenever I'm not trying to kill someone. Because A, you know, being able to draw a card and help increase the hand for next turn when I actually am going for the kill is nice to have, and the Soul Blast typically free unless I'm trying to use Alden, so nice that I can get a free draw there, and then continuous back or rear guard circle, the ability that comes in real handy when I'm going for the kill turn. During your turn, all your other rear guards and same column as it gets plus 5k power. All around, pretty solid, ups the numbers of your rear guards just that much. You can use to pressure out your opponent's Vanguard. And when you're hitting for big numbers, again, it's making them better and better, especially when you're doing multi-attack with them. So 2 of Sparar, really nice to have supporting the rear guards. I see this man consistently enough, and not to mention the fact, again, I say he's one of my favorite cards to restand whenever I'm not trying to kill someone, because technically it's a free draw. I call free draw if it doesn't affect my normal resource amount in any way, shape, or form, and it really doesn't, so to me, it's a free draw. Then we have 3 copies of Heavenly Wings of Purity Honotaria, grade 3 turn for stars 15k base, auto placed on the rear guard circle. If you have Vanguard Bastion as card, it doesn't matter if it's a Accord, OG, who is technically also considered a Accord, or if it's Prime. Counterblast 1, choose up to 1 grade 3 card from your hand, call it to rear guard circle, and if you call a card and you have 5 more units, you get to draw a card as well. I always think that it doesn't count itself for that, so I always have to double check, but it does count itself, so you know, even if you have, let's just say you're on a Bastion Accord, you have Bastion Accord on Vanguard Circle, you have 2 other rear guards, they don't have to be grade 3s, but they're most likely going to be grade 3s. You can call Honotaria, that's 4 units, use the skill, call another one, specifically a grade 3 obviously, and then because you have exactly 5 units now, you get that free draw. All nice to have. It's pretty much a cheaper Alden to some extent. Granted, you get 1 less hand card, but you pay 1 less CB, so that's why I was like Honotaria so much. And then continuous rear guard during turn. If you have 6 or more units, very easy to hit in this deck, it gets boost. So all around, pretty solid. It's a 13k booster. Works really well for a second grade 3 turn because that's typically when I'm going for like the full board assault and when I don't really have Ronaldalia to give my free boost ability to. So, you know, being able to get a full back row of these guys, really nice to have. And again, not to mention the fact they can just call grade 3 draw card. And because they can be called by any means and from anywhere, they can call themselves to get more draws. All around, pretty solid. Works on any of the 3 Bastions. Nice to have. Easy, simple 3-up for me. Then we have 3 copies of Grand Heavenly Sword Alden. Slowly but surely, we're losing reason to run Alden in the deck. Grade 3, 10% 13k base. Alden placed on rear guard circle by counter blasting 2 and soul blasting 1. Choose a card from your hand, call it to rear guard circle, and if you call to grade 3, draw 2 cards. Again, doesn't require you to be on Bastion, so, you know, if you manage to flip this over via Fort skill and your opponent was stupid enough to give you 2 CB, well, free grade 3 rear guard and you draw 2. So all around, pretty solid. So again, if you pull that off while you're on grade 2, you got 3 free attackers, with 2 of them being grade 3s. And then when you get to grade 3, whatever. But hey, still nice that I can get 2 free draws. And then auto rear guard circle, when this unit attacks into something, if you have 3 or more grade 3 units, including himself, and you're most likely going to have the Vanguard, so that's 2, all you need is 1 more rear guard. It gets with 5k power to turn. All around, pretty solid. 18k swing, probably 20k swing or 23k swing, depending on which of the 3 Bastions you are on. But also, again, being able to get a rear guard and draw 2 cards, nice. The downside is Alden is the sole thing that takes up most of your resources. So, I mean, take that as you will with the grain of salt. But hey, when he starts swinging for numbers, and he's the reason in this deck why Prime hits like a fucking truck. Outside of Prime himself, obviously. So, 3 of Alden, very solid grade 3. Gets rear guards, gets you 2 hand cards, is a really good swinger, especially with Sparar supporting him. There's not much more I can say about him. Nice 3-0. Then we have 3 copies of card I put in here just so I can say that there's one more different card outside of Accord and his new support card, and that is Divine Knight of Deeply Laid Stratagems Sages. Grade 3, 10% 13k base. I want to let this be clear. Like I said, he is in here just so I have a different card outside of Bastion's new support card. Not because of this ability. This ability does help, but it's not why he's here. Anyways, continues rear guard or guard circle. If your opponent's drive check or damage check reveal to trigger this turn, this unit has 10k power and 10k shield. All around pretty solid, you know, and especially with a deck that has a bunch of grade 3s, wanting to add a little bit more guard power. Hey, it's nice that nullifies the trigger that got pulled, especially if that triggers the reason you lose. But also, since it's a 23k swinger. So that's also nice to have, you know, just adding a little bit of pressure just to nullify the trigger being pulled. And then auto rear guard circle once per turn. When this unit attacks into anything, regardless if it's Vanguard or Rear Guard, look at the top of every deck, put it to top or bottom, put it into the deck or into your soul, as in put it back to top of deck or into soul, and then by counterblasting one from all the following. Now, I always think that this whole ability is a once per turn, and accordingly, from what I've understood, from what people have told me, only this part of the ability is a once per turn, but I still don't take my chance with that, so I only ever use this ability once per turn, so take that as you will. Either way though, CB 1 if you want to, and then perform all the following. Choose one of your opponent's 14k or greater vanguards and increase this unit's power by that unit's power to end of battle. So again, being able to up his own power is nice, so possibly being a 23k swinger, and presuming they pull the trigger in that 23k, add their 23k to your 23k, boom, you're 46k, and then remove an over trigger from your drop zone to choose one of your other firmware units, and it gets 50k power for the turn. All around pretty solid. Downside is it can't pump itself up, but hey, it can pump its other rear guards up, so Alden, for example, most likely a real target, Honataria if your board's not doing in the best state, Sparar just because, I don't know, you just need rear guards at this point, or literally anything else on your board. It's just pretty solid, so if you have to lose the over trigger because you didn't get to pull it via damage check or drive check, you just drew it normally, A, free 15k to someone for the turn, and if you're on Bastion Prime, or just on one of the two regular Bastions, A, you're probably going to force out good numbers, and again, him himself, by only costing 1 CB, he can bring his numbers up higher. The downside is, though, he does cost 1 CB to do that too, and thanks to Alden over here taking up most of our CB, kind of puts us in a trouble situation, which I only use him once per turn anyways, even if his ability is more than once per turn, but hey, he also gets a deck stack, so is that too. So 3 of Sages, almost guaranteed your drive check will flip over what you needed to, or get your soul charge, one of the two. Then we have 4 copies of one of our best booster cards ever. Onataria is obviously a close second, and that is Brave on Sky Trimmer Rondalia. Grade 3 200%, 13k base, act rearguard circle if your Vanguard Bastion's card name, put the unit to your soul, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets continuous Vanguard. All your grade 3 rearguards get boosted until end of turn. Cool. Doesn't matter if you're on Prime, Accord, or OG, it gets the skill regardless, and then act soul, put this unit to drop zone, choose one of your other grade 3 rearguards, and it gets boosted end of turn. Cool. It can give boost regardless if you played it from the other skill or this skill. And not to mention the fact, too, it just makes it so that your rear guards are hitting for bigger numbers. All around, I like this card, especially because normally what I do for combos is I maybe call an Alden or a Sparar. You know, I fill up my board real quickly except for 2 rear guard circles. I call Honataria, use Honataria's skill, counterblast 1, call Rondalia to draw a card, use Ronaldalia's skill. And this is typically first grade 3 turn, by the way. Use Ronaldalia's skill, send it to soul, give my rear guards boost for the turn, then maybe call Sages or something else like another Honataria rear guard, basically, and make sure that the Honatarios are on the, unless one of them is a Sparar, of course, then I call the Honatarios to middle and probably back left, or if I don't have a Sparar on board, I call them to back left and back right, so that when next turn comes around, I can then, you know, stand and draw. Those two have boost most likely, and then I just blast out this and then give the back center boost, and boom, it's like nothing changed. All around, Rondalia is a very solid grade 3, pretty much guarantees your entire board will always have boost, especially in combos well with Honataria. Just good grade 3. I can't say more about it. The only downside is I always forget it's in soul, so I almost try to soul blast it pretty much every time, thanks to Alden over here. But thankfully, I remember it's in soul before I put it to drop zone, so I can just quickly slide it back in and then swap it out for something else. For Rondalia, very solid grade 3, does her job well. Not much more I can say about it. And then we have 4 copies of very solid support card that works really well with this deck. Grandeur Edge Dragon. Grade 3, 10%, 13k base. Continuous hand cards. When your grade 3 would be revealed from your hand for the cost of your card's ability, regardless of who it is, whether it's a Vanguard or Rear Guard. This card may regards revealing 2 cards. For free, and just adds 1 more grade 3 to the cost of ropes, which is nice to have. And then anyway, so cool, it does that. And then can change Rear Guard to Guard Circle. If you have Vanguard Bastion's card name, regardless if it's Apex Ruler or Bastion Accord, who also counts as Apex Ruler or Apex Surpassing Sword. As long as you're on a Bastion, it's a 10k plus power and 10k plus shield active on both players' turns, meaning 23k base and 10k shield, which is nice to have. All around pretty solid, and I replaced this immediately with the Embrace Dragon because Embrace, while you have the 20k shield, always came in really helpful. I prefer the more attacking option of this, so being able to call it to board and is pretty much always guaranteed to either be a 25 if you're on OG or Prime, or if you're on Accord, it's a 28, which all around is nice to have. It does well for pressure, and if you have to keep it in hand for guard power because you have other really aggressive units on board, that's also an option too. All around, very solid grade 3. Hits for numbers, is very hard to hit over, and not to mention the fact it's also a 10k shield, so it works for defensive power as well, and it makes your skills for stuff like Fort and Rooks a lot more consistent. So easy 4 for me in terms of Grandeur and Check. Just very good card. And then we have our last grade 3s. So normally I put numbers up, like basically as you saw, I'll put like the 2 ofs up here. But because I'm doing all the badges, I decided to put them all together. So we have 2 copies, none in the ride deck, all of them in the main deck of Apex Ruler Bastion, the OG one. So grade 3 turn persona 13k base, continuous Vanguard Circle during your turn. All your grade 3 units get plus 2k power, including himself. So 15k base, nice. Basically making all of your grade 3s 15k bases, which combined with Rona Dahlia is pretty much everything swinging for 30. And if you're going first, that's pretty much a 25k drop for every single attack if your opponent doesn't see trigger. So that's nice to have. And then anyways, another skill, Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn at the end of your drive check, vote a grade 3 unit, which is nice to have. Discard, and then choose one of your rear guards and stand it. It gets 10k power for the turn. I love how the times have changed so much because I remember back in set 1, everyone was pretty much saying in Bastion's drive check, you're either getting a grade 3, so a multi-attack, a trigger, or PG. You're always guaranteed to get something that you want. And nowadays, people just say in response, you either get a grade 3 or you don't get something you want, regardless of triggers or PGs. I like how the times have changed so much to where whenever I hear people argue that conversation, that's like, it's gotten different to where the PGs and the triggers don't matter anymore. It's a matter if you can get the multi-attack or not. It just says something about the game, you know, where like multi-attack is like the big function of it. Either way, I'm not saying shit about it. I'm just saying I find it funny because it also came from the same person that said it the first time that you either get a grade 3, a trigger, or PG out of it. I just love that the same person set that back. Either way though, being able to get a rear guard stand and give it plus 10 is very solid after you see a grade 3 in the dread check, which isn't really that hard in the deck, and not to mention the fact too, it's only a simple ditch one. And again, you're pretty much guaranteed if your opponent's going second and they're on grade 2, it's a 25k drop for everything on the board. So all around Bastion is solid. He is here in this deck as an extra Bastion, so you can use Accord and or Prime more often, but he's also here in the deck because he doesn't cost anything else outside of the discard. But also, he's mainly here as an alternate ride, like just in case that you don't have Prime, because Prime is obviously better than him. But also, you don't want to go into Accord, because Accord requires that Bastion for some real pressure, so you want to go for Apex Ruler instead to get those more numbers on. So it's basically like B-Tech Prime in this deck. But hey, it's still a good option, and it counts as Bastion fodder for, you know, Prime and Accord skills, so it's a nice 2-0 for that reason. Then, speaking of Accord, we have 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the riot deck. The boy that replaced this guy in the riot deck, of sort of all people, Bastion Accord. You know what? You know, when he first got revealed, we had a name for him. It was Sword of Mankind, Bastion Accord. That was fine. That was fine. Then I saw some other weird name online. I think it was actually Sword of All People, Bastion Accord is what I saw online. And then I saw the Magnificent, the good name, the one that was amazing. The name I named the other deck after, Sword of the Nation, Bastion Accord. But no, we chose to go with Sword of All People. Why? Why? Sword of the Nation was so cool. Hell, Sword of Mankind was better than this. Why Sword of All People? Why? Oh, why? That's supposed to be a reference because it can finally work well with grade 2s and grade 1s? I don't understand this. I don't, and it bothers me like hell, but whatever. Anyways, ignoring that, just gonna cover it up on my side. 2 in the main deck, 1 in the riot deck of Bastion Accord. Grade 3 turn persona 13k base. Continuous Vanguard Circle is also regarded as Apex Ruler Bastion. So, you know, it works like how Exo or Marine Sorceress Aquamarine does, where even if you put it in the riot deck and you ride on top of Pentagleam, in this case, it would be Riot Bastion Accord on top of Rooks, it would still proc off the riot deck ability because it is considered Bastion Prime. And just like Aquamarine, they can persona ride off each other because, you know, it is still considered Apex Ruler Bastion. So, you know, you could ride this on top of this, trigger persona ride, and vice versa. And its other abilities are Continuous Vanguard Circle. All your other grade 3 or greater rear guards in the front row cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects and can plus 5,000 power. Active on both players' turns. Cool. Your opponent can't nuke them. They have to swing into them, and they make it harder by making them 18k bases. And if you combine that with Grandeur Edge over here, that's a 28k rear guard that can't be touched by effects, or can't be chosen by them, but can be nuked in total with like stuff like Battle Saga that doesn't really target. Either way, though, being able to increase power of the rear guards to basically expedite an extra 5k drop on them, but also make them harder to hit and make them harder to get rid of in general, is all around pretty solid skill. And then his other ability, which makes him better than Bastion in this regard, Auto Vanguard. At the end of battle, he attacked anything, choose one of your rear guards that's grade 3 or less, and stand it, and your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, it gets auto rear guard once per turn when this unit attacks into anything by counterblasting one and dropping any Bastion from your hand, whether it's Accord, OG, or Prime, and this unit performs drive checks until the battle, until end of turn. All around, pretty solid ability, regardless of what you drive check. It's a free stand, so people can shut the fuck up about that. But also, in the sense of, and this is the part of the ability I always technically get wrong, because whenever I do the restand is when I typically pay the CB1 discard Bastion cost, because typically I'm about to swing with that unit anyways. Again, technically that's not how it works. It is supposed to be you swing with the rear guard and then pay the cost, but for me it's one and the same, because it just like what happens first pretty much. But hey, being able to discard any Bastion and also get the get drive checks is nice, but also regardless of what grade the opponent's at, you get a free restand. Grant doesn't get numbers, and that's why sometimes Apex Ruler is better. But that's when we run in the ride deck, because again, if you go second, it does work a lot better because you do get the drive check benefit out of it, and it is a guaranteed reset, and it makes your rear guard stronger. But Apex Ruler Bastion is always nice to have on the backup, because again, it does work for Persona Red Alteration, but at the same time, it also works to get us bigger numbers. So there's that. Like, say for example, you think you can kill on your first grade 3 turn, but you have this in your riot deck, but you have this in your hand, and you just need the numbers to kill. You could go for Apex Ruler Bastion if you want to gamble on that grade 3, because you're going to need the numbers to kill, right? So that's why I run both of them. They have the alternate purpose. So 2 of them in the main deck, 1 in the riot deck, nice to have. It combos well with this and acts as another Bastion. And then the last card in the deck is, of course, 3 copies of Apex Surpassing Sword Bastion Primu. Grade 4, triple drive, 13k base, basically a better version of this thing. Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, all your phone, you get 2k for the turn. Cool. All around, pretty solid. You know, this is a 25k, this is a 15k. Pretty much all these are 15ks, but hey, you know, it adds pressure to them. And then his other ability, the thing that makes this deck kick like a truck, Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. At the end of your drive check, reveal a grade 3 or greater unit card. Put a card with Bastion's card name from your, or not unit card, but a greater card in general. So it could work with orders. Anyways, put a card with Bastion's card name from your hand or soul into the drop zone. Typically, you hit this off the ride deck, but then, you know, you have these also for spares. Stand all your grade 3 rear guards, and they get plus 5k power, or 10k power to turn. Oh, right, never mind. It is technically impossible in this deck to get 9 drives unless you don't use a skill. Either way, though, being able to board restand is great, making all those units that did restand get plus 10k power on top of that bullshit. So, you know, you basically gave plus 20 to columns. You probably saw at least 1 trigger, and then you probably have a Grandeur Edge somewhere sitting in there, and they all probably have boosters either because of Honataria or Ronaldalia. Either way, though, Prime, very solid unit. Every time I've used Prime, except for 1 game where I bricked hard and didn't see many grade 3s, and by many grade 3s, I mean I only saw 2 that entire game, because God forbid me being happy, I was able to swing for 50, like always 50s, 60s. There was 1 game where I think I made it to even the 80s. I think either 80s or like low or high 70s that almost tipped into the 80s. Either way, though, Apex Surpassing Sword Bastion Prime, very solid grade 3. Hits a shit ton of numbers, does a board restand, is pressure out the wazoo, and it just works really well with this deck. And without further ado, I'm getting this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck works really well. It has 3 different Vanguards to go into. Obviously, you don't go into this one unless you just don't have this one. Or if you're trying to kill on first grade 3 turn, then you go into Apex Ruler Bastion. But hey, we have ways to restand in all of their ways. We have ways to get power out of it. We have ways to get a lot more power out of it. And we have ways to get drive checks out of it. It's all a matter of picking the right one for the right moment, which is what I like. Most of the time, it's going to come down to Bastion Accord and Bastion Prime. But hey, Apex Ruler Bastion, there will be a day where he hard carries. And that day will be the day that I'm proven right to run this in the deck. So without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't scroll, follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to send up your Vanguards.